So I want to see the spark in my reader's eyes. And that's why I interjected, I put in a lot of things that will bring that spark. I want you to feel the joy in a joyful chapter. Like you're just like, this is, I can't believe it, right? You're excited for the character. I want you to feel that sadness. I want it to be genuine. I want you to understand why the people do this in the island. What drives them.
Welcome to Unmute with Priya, the podcast where silence ends, voices rise, and women rediscover the freedom to speak and live authentically, especially in life after 40. This show is proudly sponsored by Project Icon. I'm your host, Priya Sudarshanam. Let's dive into today's conversation. On today's episode, we're going to be talking with Odemaris Mendoza, a lifelong educator turned storyteller who brings her island's culture and spirit to life through vivid, heartfelt tales. Welcome to the show, Odemaris. I'm so thrilled to have you here with me today.
Thank you for having me. I've been super excited all week about your podcast, so very happy to be here.
Yeah, so we are exploring this book that you've written, and it just sounds amazing. The Gifts of El Jíbaro. I hope I'm saying it correctly, Jíbaro, looking at the accent. Yeah, so tell me a little bit more about the inspiration about this book, because there's a lot behind it.
Let me begin with telling you what a jíbaro is, because sometimes people say, what's a jíbaro? So a jíbaro is a dweller in the mountains. It's a Taíno word from the natives, and that's what it means, the people who live in the mountains. So just like I like to liken it to the Scottish Highlanders, they have their own distinct culture. They are known by their bagpipes and their kilts. The men wear kilts. Right. Well, our Jíbaros are known for their culture and also for their hats. If you see the straw hats, they're like wispy.
Yes, I've seen those before.
Bits of straw, that's their hat. So everybody recognizes the hat, but they may not necessarily recognize who the Jíbaros are. So my father was a Jíbaro from the town of Ciales, which is right smack in the center of Puerto Rico. It's a beautiful place. And I've always been a very observant child. And I always observed how they interrelated with the family and, how he treated people. And it really, I admired the culture. My mother's culture was a little bit different. Her people came from the coast, so I watched them both, and there are good things about both. But I always thought that I admired more things about the Jíbaros, even though, there are a lot of things to admire about the people on the coast too. So it stuck with me, and I spent a lot of time with my dad until I moved to the States. And when he passed away, I was devastated, as anyone who loses their dad might be. But to me, the way I describe it is the world lost a color that day. It's not as bright as it used to be. And I said, wow. And I remember walking my dog, and it was like, it feels so different, and I wanted to do something to honor my dad, and how happy he was and how generous he was and how he treated it. You could be, in a hierarchy, you could be the lowest person, but he would never treat you like that. He would always share whatever he had. And that's how they are. They're known for their generosity and for their willingness to help, So I said, I have to do something. So I started coming up with a story. And it took a lot of mulling over because, first of all, I wasn't even thinking about publishing it at that time. I was just honoring my dad. And it took years, to be honest, because I was busy. I took care of my mom, my mom too, and just busy. So fast forward to 2021. I said, okay, this story's been in there roaming around for far too long. I literally had it mapped out in my brain, everything that would happen in the story. I just hadn't written it down, because that's how much I thought about it over the years. And I said, okay, you're going to have to buckle down. This is the time you're going to sit down and you're going to write, and there's no timetable. I told myself that there's no timetable. You've waited this long. You can wait a little bit longer.
Yeah.
But I wanted to make sure that I did it like I gave it all my heart and all everything that I knew it could be. So I set aside Saturday evenings. And it was quite funny. If you ever watch me write, it's quite funny, I have to say. Nobody can film me, but it's really funny because I have my little corner in my office and I put on my headset and I'll sit there and put, whatever tunes I feel would inspire me and I sing. That doesn't sound so bad, right? You should hear me sing. It's horrible.
what
So it's
kind
quite it,
what kind of music do you sing?
Oh, anything. I'm even learning French, so I try to sing in French to practice. And I love world music of any kind. And whatever inspires me at that point, that's what I use. Of course, I played a lot of Jíbaro music, which is great, but that's not all I played. But anyway, the inspiration came. Then I had to tell myself, you need to buckle down because if you really want the story to come out, you're going to have to make the time. So I like to say that whatever you spend time on will flourish. Whatever you don't, it will die away. Right. So
Absolutely.
I told myself it needs to flourish. So every Saturday I would do that for hours at a time. I would go to bed at 3, 4 in the morning writing or researching. And I would get into, I felt like Alice in Wonderland sometimes. You go down the rabbit hole into something that I never knew about. And I said, oh, this is perfect. I need to include it in my book. And then I wanted to make sure that I had it 100% correct. So, there was a lot of research involved. So I say, for the most part, life happens here and there. So some Saturdays I could not write, but most of the time I did. So I spent 3 years writing this book because I
So
wanted to get it just right. And it
so
was
you
my
started
passion.
in you started in 2021 and you finished it in 2024, is that correct?
Yes. And then
Yeah.
we had to do the editing process. So it was I'm new to all this, so it was
Right.
very raw for me because you have to hear your editor say, "Okay, what is this? What do you mean by this?" And then you had to change it. And I was like, oh, "What? You're saying what?" So I had to go through all that process, but it was great. I've learned so much, about writing and getting published and all of that. And I'm actually starting my second book, which is a sequel to this one and it's already happening again. The sparks are going. So, but I'm in the early stages. So, I think this one should not take 3 years to write, but, it will take at least a year for me to get it down the way I like to get it down on
Yeah.
paper. Yeah.
This is really inspiring for anyone who has an idea or is wanting to share a story, regardless of what that story is, to just actually just start the process. Even me, I stall. And when I stall, it's like what you said, nothing's going to happen. But when you actually take action towards it, you can actually, whether it takes 1 year, whether it takes 3 years, at least you're making progress to it. So congratulations
Thank
on
you.
this book. Yeah. I just want to rewind a little bit because thank you for giving, as you were describing a Jíbaro and your dad and in the highlands, I was just picturing it in my mind. But you also said the word Taíno. Now I know that from my experience in New York and the people who taught me about Taíno, but I would love for you to share just a little bit more about Taíno and their origin, where they're from. And I don't even think we even said in Puerto Rico that that's where you're originally from. So
That's right. My
yeah,
book is set in the island of Puerto Rico, the island of enchantment. And in the book, you do travel to a lot of places in Puerto Rico. And the Taínos are mentioned too because they are Puerto Rico too.
they are the
Yeah.
indigenous people of Puerto Rico. Is that
Yes,
correct?
they
Yeah.
are the indigenous people from Puerto Rico. Also, in pretty much all the islands in the Caribbean, they did have Taínos. They
Okay.
were some of them were like a more classical tribe, if you will. The ones on the East Eastern Caribbean were slightly different, but they were all, they came from the same place. So I think they're very underrated as far as the the natives because they have contributed so much to us, to our language. Like for example, the word barbecue, it's a Taino word. The word canoe, the word
Really?
hammock. I mean, There are so many. They invented barbecue, but they're not getting the credit for it. They were
I
the
did
first
not know
people
this.
that the Dutch, the French, the Spanish, the Portuguese, they encountered them, and they used to cook on racks made out of, whatever wood they had, and they use ají, which is like chilies, basically, different kinds of peppers. There are so many out there. It's amazing.
Wow.
So, that was carried over to the States, and, people have added their spin to barbecue, but they were the first ones that used the barbecue.
Wow.
And the word for hurricane is another word. It's a Taíno word. It is the god of the wind, huracan. So there's a lot.
That's
So,
amazing. Yeah. And you're a lifelong educator. Tell me a little bit more where where grade did you teach in, or what subject did you teach?
well, I have taught. I started as a paraprofessional in
Hmm.
1989, believe it or not. And in college, I was going to be an architect. What? Yes, I was going to be an architect. And but then I switched to education because I thought this is really where my heart lies. So I began teaching. Spanish to high school students, and by fate, I was thrown into the elementary area, and I thought, okay, wasn't planning on this, but let's make the best of it. So I started teaching Spanish to an entire school, and I didn't even have a classroom. I used to have a cart with all my things, and I made it so much fun. Like I would carry props and all these things everywhere, and everybody knew me, and it was great, but it was intense. So that was when I graduated, there was a shortage of teaching positions, and they said, well, we're not going to fund your position anymore, so you have to basically find another job. And I'm like, oh, what? So so I
Yeah.
became interested in teaching English as a second language, and I transferred schools, and I got my classes that I needed to take that were extra, and became certified. And then I did that for many years. And it was so much fun. It was so much fun. It was one of those things that life throws you at you, and then you get shocked, and then you're like, okay, there has to be a reason for this, and then it becomes evident as you go through the process. So I did that for many years. I taught kindergarten through fifth. Then I taught high school. I did teach college. I loved college too. um, my mom at that point was not very well. She was not physically well, so I had to stop the college and come back to the high school. So I've taught all of them. I'm not much of a middle school teacher. I don't have the temperament for that. God bless middle school teachers, but I do have some middle schoolers right now. But I still like my high school kids. I
This is
relate with them.
incredible because as a lifelong educator, you could see the passion come through that you just loved sharing and sharing your gifts and your gifts of sharing knowledge, whether that was Spanish or, English as a second language. And I feel like this book is a manifestation of your passion for sharing with others. Would you say that you put your
Yes,
passion into this book?
one of my favorite things to see is when you observe a child. Sometimes you have children that you can't figure out. There's something that you don't know what drives them, and I like to know that, because
Yeah.
that's what you hold on to bring them and move forward with them. So sometimes, they're there, they're just not really there. They're not paying attention, they're just there. But sometimes you say something and their eyes go, "Mm," and you see that spark. And I'm like, I want to see that spark in my students. So I look for that spark, whatever generates that. And then I tailor things to them. For example, I had a student in my class that was very fidgety, and I would hear that he would hum sometimes and things like that. So I'm like, okay, he seems to be musically inclined, maybe a percussionist, something like that. So he would pay attention like when we were reading, I would have him drum the syllables, and then everybody would drum the syllables, and he was on, and his eyes were sparkly, and he was 100% there for that lesson. So I
Yeah.
tried to incorporate his talent. Then I had another student that was very gifted at drawing. She was light years away from everyone else, so she wasn't as interested in what they were doing because she was more advanced, you know. So I'm like, okay, how can I get that spark so that she can grow from it, pay attention, and interact with the others. So I'm like, how would you illustrate this book? You know, this is how the author and illustrator did it, but in your perspective, what would you do? What would you make different? And she would make the whole book over again. And then she would share with the class, and she would be reading, you know, and it just incorporated everything. And everybody was paying attention, you know, because it was genuine. It wasn't just
Yes.
something that somebody brought and, oh, here's a textbook, page 23.
Right.
It was authentic. So I want to see the spark in my readers' eyes. And that's why I I interjected, I put in a lot of things that will bring that spark. I want you to feel the joy in a joyful chapter. Like, like you're just like, this is, I can't believe it, right? You're excited for the character. I want you to feel that sadness. You know, I want it to be genuine. I want you to
Yeah.
understand why the people do this in the island. You know, what drives them, you know. And I think I've gotten so many compliments about the characters. People tell me, I just don't want them to go away, you know, like the book to
Yeah.
end. And I'm like, yeah, I've done my job with the characters. Yay. So they tell me, oh, I feel like I've been transported to a different place. You know, I've learned even some Spanish. So, you know, that tells me, okay, there's a spark there. And that makes me happy when I hear that.
The Gifts of El Jíbaro, and your voice and what you're trying to bring out and what you're trying to bring to the reader, it truly stands out just with that, just with how you describe that. Tell me a little bit more about, without giving away the book, because I want the listeners on
Mhm.
this podcast to actually go and buy the book, including myself. Tell me a little bit more about the journey that someone could experience going through, you know, or someone could, let me rephrase that. Tell me a little bit more about the journey that a reader will go through as they read your book.
Well, I think the reader will identify with the main character. His name is Braulio, and he is a very mature person. You start off with him being a teenager, and you see his drive, his willingness to do this, and how he's been raised. You know, that's key. How he's been raised, and he has a friend, lifelong friend. His name is Santiago, and they're very different physically, but they are driven. These boys are driven, you know, for various reasons. You know, I'm not going to go into the reasons, but
Right.
Santiago has a very different life than the one that Braulio has had. And they decide they're going to do something. And it's funny because they do not stop. They go. And you would think people like that would be very egotistical. Not them. They weren't raised that way. You know, they value the Jíbaro culture again. I'm not going to go into too many details, but they
Yeah.
value. They're raised that way, so that is how they operate. You know, that's their SOP, if you will, standard operating procedure. So they go through life. Life happens, you know, to all of us. We have moments where you're like, oh, what am I going to do? How do I navigate this? You know, but the choices that they make, they're very aware that the choices that they make really can make or break a person, can make or break them. It could make or break a person. And they choose to do the right thing. They choose joy. They choose to be um, a compassionate person. And they change. You literally see a snowball of change everywhere they go, and it comes at a cost, right?
Yeah.
There are always costs when you make decisions and consequences, and but over the whole entire book, you see how their parents raised them, they raised their children, and you see the children. So it's about 40 years in one novel. You see the whole family. You see characters that are pretty hysterical. You see characters who have had a sad life. You see a little bit of everything. And the funny thing is that they keep finding these pebbles everywhere they go, and it's like really random. Why are we getting these pebbles? What's going on? So
Yeah.
there's a little bit of mystery in there too, a little bit of, fantasy, if you will. There's a lot of culture. You're going to know how Christmas is celebrated. You're going to visit people, visit places that are key in the island. You're going to learn some of the foods that are eaten, what they're made of. And if you don't speak Spanish, you will know what it is, because I made sure that in the very bottom of each page, it explains what it is. I don't like my readers to have to go back and forth to the back of the book to look up something, or even to Google or something like that. Is there. So the momentum, the flow is not going to go anywhere. You're going to keep reading. So I've done that. I've also at the end of the book, you can try making some of the meals and the desserts that my characters would eat, being jibaros. So some of them are vegan, naturally vegan. Some of them, you can tweak, right, to make them vegan. And basically, you can eat an entire meal just like the jibaros did, right from my kitchen. So,
That's incredible. And before we started recording, we were even talking about mofongo. Is that a food? Is that a traditional
mofongo
food?
is
Or
a jibaro food too.
it's a
It's
Hibaro
not in
food?
this book. They do eat mofongo,
Oh, okay.
but like I said, I'm writing the sequel. And mofongo will be in the sequel.
I,
It
yeah,
has
it
to be.
makes, if anybody has ever, if you've never tried mofongo, you need to look up the recipe. It's one of my most favorite
Well,
dishes ever.
all right, so mofongo, for those of you who do not know what mofongo is, it's made out of plantains that have been fried and mashed, and they have garlic, and sometimes they have chicharrón, which is like crispy pork rinds, little bits in there, little surprises every time you bite. So sometimes you will serve it with caldo de pollo, which is like chicken broth, very rich, and then you dip the mofongo in the chicken broth, and you eat that just like that. My favorite one is the mofongo criollo, a la criolla, which is with camarones, with shrimp. Ooh.
With
So,
shrimp.
so that one it has a red sauce, Creole sauce. It's not spicy, but it's very savory. And you basically eat it on top of the mofongo. It is the best. So if you ever have the opportunity to eat that, definitely try that. But I will include that particular recipe, my favorite, in my
It's
next
a
book.
It's amazing because just even in this few minutes of talking with you, I like my mind is going crazy thinking about the characters. Like as you talked about them, I'm visualizing, and now I'm visualizing highlands and what it must look like. And then now you've given just even a glimpse of a food journey, and then I'm thinking about that. So this is it sounds, the way that you are representing culture and identity in this book, what's one misconception or a gap that you see in how storytelling is being done these days, whether it's in general, in cultural in general, or even just specifically with Latino Puerto Rican stories? Even, yeah, tell me a little bit more about that.
Well, I've always been a very strong reader for as long as I can remember. And I've noticed as I read other Latino writers' work, I've noticed like a shift in how the stories are presented. It seems to me, the ones that I've read, they like to use shock to attract readers,
Okay.
dysfunction, things like that. They do put culture in there, but I don't see that the reader, as somebody foreign coming into that culture and reading about it, they are not getting a good picture of the culture itself. Maybe the character has a different motivation. Maybe that's how it was in their house. That's how they grew up. That's their culture. But it doesn't really. They don't really specify that. It's just presented like that, like shock
Right.
value. And I'm like,
Yeah.
wow, I feel like Um, Most of the ones I've read some really amazing historical fiction ones that were written by longtime Latino writers, and I love those. I think they give a richer, truer picture than the ones I've read that have that shock value. I personally, as an educator, again, I think part of being a well rounded person is acquiring knowledge about other cultures, not necessarily learning their language. I mean, I do that. I love that. That's one of my things. But I think immersing yourself in the culture, and when you travel, you actually interact with people from that culture. You would be amazed at how generous people are, and so how flattered they are that you are doing this. You know, you might be self conscious and say, "Oh, I'm going to say that wrong. I don't want to say it." Just say it. Just say it. Don't know what you mean, and they'll smile. And if it needs a correction, they tell you how to say it, and you move on. No big deal, right?
Right,
But
right.
the interaction, it's never going to leave your mind. You're always going to remember the time you did this and you actually interacted, as
Yeah.
opposed to just going to a museum or going shopping and wherever you are. I mean, those are great too, but I think the human connection is missing. And I see that the culture connection is missing in a lot of the books. One of the things I noticed when I had a book signing a couple of weeks ago, I'm sorry, a couple of months ago, I was just watching people as they went in and out and whatnot. And I noticed that a lot of the visitors, they just went right over the horror section or
Mm.
um, the fantasy kind of horror section. And that just kind of blew me away. I thought, wow, I didn't see anybody going to the nonfiction area. I didn't see anybody going to the cooking aisle. Romance had some visitors, mostly things that were very dark. And I thought, wow, I've seen a lot of changes in the kids, as all these decades go by, and
Right.
I see that they are getting immersed in that, and I think we need to stop for a minute, try to go outside your comfort zone, try something different. You'd be surprised at how much better you might feel after reading something different. It doesn't have to be my book; it could be anybody else's book that is of a different genre, and I think the publishers and things like that are doing this because they're selling. But at some point, we have to think, okay, what am I sacrificing here? This is
Yeah.
this is what the kids are reading. This is what people are reading. There's so much negativity in the world these days. You really have to do your best to put some positivity in your life. Otherwise, you become a negative person, right?
You're bringing up, just education and culture versus that shock factor, and how coming back to the basics of education and cultural competency, you with that you're removing cycles of ignorance and breaking cycles of ignorance with doing that. So you're bringing up a really important point, and what is grabbing attention these days, and you're bringing back to what I used to read when I was little, and these stories that just really grabbed your attention and allowed your mind to wander into a place of beauty, rather than, if it's a horror story, something that's out of fear.
And I'm not saying, don't read horror stories. I'm
Yeah.
saying be balanced about it,
Right, right.
because your soul needs some of that too, some of the
Yeah.
positive, content that's out there.
Would you say that writing this book was your creative superpower? Is this, tell me a little bit more about what you feel your superpower is. Because I feel like you have a lot in what you've shared with me today.
Thank you. Well, I think my superpower, um, I mentioned a little bit about it before. Like to see I like to understand people and see where they're coming from. What are they about? What drives them? And
Yeah.
I I think that is critical when you're an author. You need to know, you need to understand. So, like my readers, initially I thought I was going to write this book in Spanish, and it would be just Spanish readers. And I said, wait a minute. no, I need to write it in English because they need to know, they need to understand too. By then, I mean everybody else in the world who speaks English, right? Not just, the US, my other readers need to see, they need to be exposed to something like that. It might be extremely eye-opening to them.
Yeah.
So I think um, it's kind of like twofold. Like I like to do that as a superpower, but I'm also like crazy driven. Anybody who knows me knows that I'm driven. And when Odemaris has something in her mind, she's gonna do it. It's just like olvídalo. Forget about it, right? So I
Forget
mean,
about
I
it.
I think once I have made up my mind about something, I don't stop. And this book is case in point. I thought the hardest thing to do for me was to sit down and write that first chapter. And I was literally shaking when I finished because I thought, oh, this was not bad at all. I was like
Yeah.
super shocked that it was not bad at all. And it just flowed, right? It was like begging to be written at that point because I'd waited so long to do it.
So
So I
so
think
would you say that was the hardest part of bringing sharing this richness of Puerto Rican life to life in your story? Would you say that was the hardest part of this whole journey, was just actually starting it?
yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Okay.
yes. Like I said, I had been mulling this over. I had the characters, I had their motivation, I had everything. And I was like, all right, I'm going to put it down on paper. I had to map it out so that I could write my chapters and all of that. And it was like, wow. So I mapped it out and then I sat down and wrote the first chapter. And I already knew what everything was going to be like in that one. I had thought about the opening of the book many, many times. And it's actually something that my dad shared with me about his time in Ciales. And there's a lot of my dad in the book. Of course, it was a book to honor him, but there's a lot about other people that are real and some of them are not. Um, there's a little bit about my hair in there. You're going to laugh, but yes, I have to put my hair in the story because my hair does not do what you want it to do ever. It's like always doing whatever it wants, and I've made peace with it and moved on. But my hair is in the story.
Okay. I'm
Yes,
definitely going to have to read it.
that's the funny part. Anyway,
That's
to my
funny.
family, they know. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, her hair. Anyway, so
So, looking back, just even you started writing this book in 2021. Looking back 10 years, or even just right before you started writing this book, or even before it was an idea or you had the concept, what would you say to that woman, the Odemaris from 10 years ago? What would you wish you had known about writing, patience, or trusting your creative path? Yeah.
wow, I would say to her first. I would say to her two things. First of all, find the time because there is time. There is time out there to be had,
Yep.
and
Yep.
we have to like get better at managing our time to so that we do give the time to the things that we find important, to us. Right? Everybody has different, priorities and likes and dislikes. So that was key. All right, I'm having to do that again because I'm writing the other book. At the other side of that is as a mom that I was like burning the candle at both ends for reasons, that just came to me because of life. My mom fell
Right.
ill and I'm working and I'm raising my child, and teaching is demanding. So there was a lot. And then we also had, medical issues along the way.
Yeah.
So it was very stressful. And I think that 10 years ago to now, I've learned that I have to take care of myself. It's like, it's very cliche, the mask analogy is like you have to put the mask on first to save the others, right? And I don't like that phrase. And I can't believe I'm saying that now, um, but
Yep. And
basically, you have to prioritize and do things that bring you joy so that you can give joy, and I think nowadays there's so much emphasis. Like sometimes I will sit there on Instagram and watch, people, and I cannot believe the routines that people have. Like they spend so much time For example, just doing their face, all the makeup. And I'm thinking, wow, mine is like 5 minutes. I'm out the door. I don't want to spend time doing that. I want to spend time doing this, listening to an audiobook or something that makes me, motivated and think of, um, it just betters your life, right?
Right, right.
I could be swimming. I love to swim. I could be swimming somewhere. And I try to put something every day that was for me. And most of the time that works. I mean, there are days like Mondays. Who wants to do anything on Mondays? Anyway, so like on
Ex-
Mondays, sometimes I didn't get to do that, but I would make sure that I do something for myself, and I'm also a woman of faith, so I spend time, praying and, um, uh, you know, um reading the Bible and things like that, and devotional. So that's important to me. I do that every day. So people have different variations of this, but you should always have time to do that, even
yep.
if you're that busy. And believe me, I was so busy, I don't even know how I did it. But that is important. Find the time to do what you love, and find the time to take care of yourself. That's what I would tell my 10-year-old
Amazing.
old younger self.
Older, younger self.
Younger self, I guess. Yeah. I
That's
didn't have it
beautiful.
down then. I didn't have it down
Yeah.
then, but I have it down now. So
I don't think a lot of us have it down until we hit midlife, which is this about what this entire podcast is about. And you bring up something so important. As women, whether you're a mother or not a mother, we're just kind of in this nurturing space, and we give and we give and we give our whole lives. And
mhm.
and 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 then at one point you realize, oh my gosh, I'm depleted. I need to start taking care of myself. I've been
Mhm.
taking care of others. And then when you start taking care of yourself, then that creativity comes out. You start realizing, hey, I want to start doing this. Hey, I want to write a book. So you bring up a really amazing point about taking care of ourselves, and
Mhm.
and that it's not guilty. We don't have to be guilty about it, nor do we have. It's not selfish to take care of ourselves.
Not at all. Not at
Yeah,
all.
yeah.
Yeah.
So amazing, amazing. So I want, so many women, and I know, like I said, I speak to women, and if you're a male and you're listening to this is for you as well. But so many people in midlife, we go through life maybe doing the traditional, went to school, now we go to college, we've stayed in this career, always wished, oh, I wish I could have been a musician, I wish I could have written a book. And there's so many people that feel this pull to tell their stories, but they doubt maybe it's too late, or maybe my voice doesn't matter, nobody's going to read this book. What would you tell that woman or a man listening to this right now who wants to start that journey of writing, or
Yeah,
that creative spark?
what you have to say is valuable. Don't delay. Just put it out there. And I think that, um, most people feel like they might be unqualified to write. I mean, I used to feel like that. I'm like, wait, I've read thousands of books, and I've explored many different things, and you do internalize, like the children that I teach. You teach them certain things, and they internalize that eventually. And I think, to have grace with themselves. They may not be perfect right away, but get it down. Say what you have to say. Get it down on paper. You can always go back and edit it, right?
Right.
And change things, so that you make it better. But the fear, like that was my fear. I thought, oh my gosh, I'm never going to get this right. I don't even want to get started. And I did. I said, okay, I'm going to be bold. I'm going to do it. It's now or never. So I think, that getting over that is what holds a lot of people up. So I say be bold. In my country, we have a saying that says, um, de los no se de los cobardes no se ha escrito nada, and that means nothing's been written about the cowards.
Oh, I
So
love
that means,
that.
yeah, so that means be bold. Do what you have to say, do or say, and be bold. Take the risk, right? So that's what I tell people. Just do it.
Just do
Sorry,
it.
Nagin. Anyway.
uh, well, and if there's one thing that you're hilarious. I'm loving this. If there's one thing that you want listeners to remember about you, your journey, or the gifts of El Jíbaro, what would that be?
I would say that there is great potential for joy and for joy and for enrichment. Even if you've never heard of novels like mine, or there's a lot of them out there that are, in the same genre, or even about Puerto Rico. Some people don't even know where Puerto Rico is. It's like we're part of the U.S.
Yeah.
and it is a distinctly different culture, though. You really see that, and I think it would it would be very enriching for you to read it, and explore it. Just go out of your comfort zone and try something new if you haven't tried anything like that. I do have some historical characters that were real, that come to my novel, and they interact with the characters. You probably have heard of them. And if you feel like you want to take a little vacation, it will give you that too. It will give you that sense too.
That's
And about
amazing.
me, if you want to know something about me, as you can tell, I will not put anything negative out there. I'm all about the good things in life. So if you want to feel uplifted, if you want to be happy and positive, and have something that will leave you with a good feeling, um, try my book and see. Yeah, I think you'll be pleasantly surprised.
Amazing, amazing. And before we close, tell the listeners how we can be around your energy, whether it's getting the book, or I do believe you hold um, book readings. Is that
I
correct?
do
Yes.
hold.
Yeah.
I've held. I live in Florida, so I've held book signings in the state of Florida. I will have my book in Spanish coming up, so I will be doing another round
Okay.
to promote the book. You can see me on Facebook with my name, Odemaris Mendoza. I'm in Instagram at Odemaris M, and on X too, Odemaris Mendoza. The book is available in Amazon right now in hardcover and paperback. It is going to be available as an ebook, and next year I'm going to have it in audiobook format. Um, I will. I'm going to be working on that in English and Spanish. So there's more to come. They're in my website, www.odemaris-mendoza.com. You get to see some of the places where the characters visited, and you get to learn more. Like, you could hear the music, you could see what some of the places where they lived look like, and some of the places they visited. So it's the teacher in me. I can't help it. I have to share all that
Absolutely.
information. Yes.
And we will put the links to all of that, what you just shared, in the show notes, so that the listeners can grab that book and get in touch with you, especially if you have a new book coming out. Definitely to be in touch
Yes,
with
and
you.
if you want to do a book club, and you would like to read my book, you can contact me via my website, and I will visit your book club in Zoom. So, or Google Meet, whichever one you prefer. But that would give you a chance to speak with me and ask me all the questions that you might have, and just get a little bit more, about the background and things like that. So I will also do that for my readers.
Amazing. And then Odemaris, what is one thing unrelated to this book that you can share with the listeners about you that we don't know about you? And it could be your favorite Netflix series that you binge on. It could be.
Oh, oh boy, you just hit. Well, funny you should mention. I, I've had to be pried away from my TV lately because I am obsessed with this Native American series that I didn't even know existed. And I said, okay, I'm going to watch this. This is completely new. And oh, it's so good. It's called Dark Winds.
And dark winds, because I'm in New Mexico, and I'm and living by Navajo Nation. So when you watch that, so many of the places that they show in Dark Winds are familiar around here. So I
Yeah.
am with you there.
But I like to watch. I watch French movies, and because I'm trying to practice French and see how much I can understand from normal speech, the speed that they speak normally. And I watch things from Finland, but it's great. I love all of that.
Oh, I love it because that's your exploration of culture, even in Netflix.
Yes, you're
Yeah.
right. I do that all the time. Absolutely. And I do read a lot too, but another thing that I do that I don't know, maybe some people do as well, but I love to play music no matter what I do. It's quite funny. If I don't like something that I'm doing at home, I just, it's not my favorite thing, like ironing. Who likes ironing? So I will find the fastest music I can possibly find, and I will iron to the beat, and then I'll get it done like so fast. It's like it's done. And then when I'm cooking, I find music from the country that I'm cooking. Sometimes I'll, cook, from Puerto Rico. Sometimes I cook something from here. I learn to cook from everywhere too, because variety is the spice of life, right? So I will play that music. That's totally me.
Well, I think I need to come and visit you. This is awesome. Odemaris,
You're welcome.
thank you so much. We appreciate your time today, and thank you so much for sharing your story with us. And as I said, for those of you who are interested, all the information about accessing the book, the website, it will be in the show notes below this video if you're watching on YouTube or any other video platform.